how to value any wholesale real estate deal with my 21 years experience. Guys, my name is Rick Ginn, and I'm going to teach you the 5 critical things to evaluate any wholesale deal so you get the maximum profit and you have a successful transaction. But before I get into it, please do me a favor. Make sure you smash that like button, hit that subscribe notification button to continue to receive the absolute best up-to-date information on wholesaling. So valuing deals, like it's also known as underwriting the deals, I'm going to share with you my 21 years experience and how to break it down step by step. Let's get into it. Number 1, first and foremost, I always want to identify the seller's motivation. Why? Because honestly, it's usually the single most important factor in any deal, because the more urgent a seller is, usually the better the wholesale deal is going to be. And I want you to understand this. Even if you're not direct to the seller, I typically want to know this information out. So if you are sharing this deal or JVing it with someone, or there's another party involved, somebody else is funding it, I always want to know the original seller's motivation. Once I identify that motivation, I can tell you pretty quickly if it's going to be a great valued wholesale deal. Without the motivation, you have no idea where these transactions are going. A true wholesaler always knows the motivation. An example, if someone needs to sell quickly because they need money by next Tuesday, then I know they need it sold super fast. And the faster it's got to be sold, usually the deeper discount. So by identifying the true motivation, it is the key to finding the most value in almost any wholesale deal. Number 2, risk tolerance. So the beauty of wholesaling is we are able to limit the risk. So if I'm just starting out in wholesaling, I've never done a deal before, and honestly, I'm broke, my risk tolerance is extremely low. Why? Because I don't have any money to get a deal done. So you're going to have to do most deals via assignment with very little to no deposit. Now, the really cool thing is your risk is very low, but usually your profit's going to be minimized, and you have to understand that when valuing a deal. As you get more established and you get some more money, you can take a little bit more risk. But keep in mind, the more risk you take, the higher the reward it has to be. Now, a true wholesaling transaction should mitigate most of the risk. Honestly, the only risk I take in a deal is how much money am I going to make? I'm not talking about am I going to make any money or zero money. That's what fix and flippers do. I don't want any part of that game because they always typically lose in the end. A wholesaler is only doing a deal if they know they're going to make a profit. Now, if I know I can make 20 or 30 grand more by leaving a $5,000 deposit over a $1,000 deposit, then my only risk there is $4,000. So the other risk factors that you need to factor in is the location. Sometimes you can do a deal in a rough neighborhood, but is your safety worth it? I'm not just talking about your financial risk. I'm talking about your physical risk. Would you go to that property at night? Would you only go in during the daytime? Because keep in mind, if you're assigning the contract or you're doing a wholesale, you're going to have to probably go back out to that property to bring your cash buyer through. And that puts you at physical risk. And so many wholesalers only look at their financial risk. You got to look at your physical risk. And to be quite frank and honest with you, when people try to present that you're going to make a $100,000 profit on this deal, you better really look into the risk of that deal, because that's not typical on your average single family home. And if the profit margin seems like too huge, somebody's presenting you an offer, use your underwriting skills to evaluate the property. And the first thing I'm going to go back to is I'm going to go back and look at the motivation of the seller and see what's going on. Honestly, I want to find out if I'm being told the truth. If you're not being told the truth, that's when people are trying to manipulate you, trying to commit fraud. And a lot of times your gut reaction will go off. Pay attention to it. It's really important, especially when you're evaluating your risk. The last factor in risk you have to look at is time. How much time is this deal going to take? A lot of times you can make a quick $5,000 or $10,000 via an assignment of a property, assignment contract, or sometimes you can do a wholesale and go, well, I can make $30,000 or $40,000, but that 2 weeks can turn into 2 months. And honestly, if you don't play your cards right, it could turn into 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, and might not work out at all. What if there's another pandemic? What if the economy completely collapses? What if the stock market crashes? What if interest rates keep shooting up? Those are risk tolerances you have to understand. Most of you starting out, doing deals via assignment of contract is going to minimize your risk. You're going to make less of a profit, but you will not go broke making a profit. If you risk everything up front, if it doesn't work out, it's going to wipe you out completely. That's not what wholesaling is about. Do not be a speculator. Focus on wholesaling and understand you want to mitigate your risk, especially when you're starting out. Take these factors into consideration when considering the value of any wholesaling deal. The third one is property occupancy. And what do I mean by that? Is in the contract that you're looking to purchase, or if you're working directly with a motivated seller, is the property vacant? Is it homeowner occupied, which means the homeowner lives there? Is there a tenant in there? Is it a rental property? Is it a problem tenant? Is it a problem tenant that's trashed the property? Or do we have a squatter in there? And you have to factor all this in. Now, if the property is vacant, it usually minimizes your risk and makes the valuation go up on any wholesaling deal. That's my favorite type of property because I can do anything with it. I can bring as many buyers through it. And honestly, they're my favorite type of properties to buy. Now, the other one is if it's homeowner occupied. Some homeowners have different levels of comfort than others. Some will only let you bring one person through there, and they tell you one and that's it. And Rick, if you bring anybody else through, I'm gonna complain. I'm gonna cancel your contract, and I won't sign anything for you. And if you don't honor that request, understanding you're gonna have an issue. But that does affect your valuation on the property, because if you don't bring in the right cash buyer, you might have to get out of the contract, or you're stuck in that contract. You might have to buy it yourself. So take that into consideration. Some owners could care less. And that's kind of what you want to hear, but be responsible and understand your property occupancy, especially the tolerance for a owner occupied property. Now, when it comes to tenants, they can be good and they can be bad. What I like about tenants is they'll tell you everything that's wrong with the property, but when you go to assign your property, they're going to do the exact same thing with your cash buyers. And some tenants don't take care of the property, and some tenants don't want anybody coming through the property, even though they don't own the property. Once again, you have to assess the risk factor of property occupancy when you are trying to figure out the value of a property. The more difficult the tenant is, the less value is going to be in your deal, or the more you have to discount the property to either pass this on to your new cash buyer or you to deal with it personally in a wholesale deal. Number 4 is you have to consider your disposition strategy when you value any wholesale deal. And what do I mean by that? Once again, are you doing an assignment of contract? Are you going to do a wholesale? Are you going to wait 3 months for the tenants to move out before you sell the property? Markets can go up, markets can go down. You have to understand your disposition strategy. Now, a lot of you starting out, you want to do an assignment of contract, and honestly, you want to sell it as soon as possible, if not yesterday. And understanding that when you value your deal. And some of you will take less than others because you got to get your rent paid. You got to get a car note done. Honestly, let your ego go. If you got into wholesaling because you're trying to fix a financial problem quickly, take the fastest deal possible because you cannot kill taking a profit. So many wholesalers try to hold out for like the maximum value, and they don't understand the cost of doing a transaction over 3 months, when the reality is if you buy it right, you can get it sold in 2 weeks. Yes, you'll probably take less, but you won't get killed for taking a profit. Understand your disposition strategy so you can correctly value your deal. Also, in your disposition strategy, if you don't have a lot of cash buyer activity for that property, maybe you're in a rougher neighborhood or something like that, you got to understand your cash buyer's tolerance on how quickly they'll close and how easily they'll fund that deal. Now, why do I want to know? Because I'll enter into a deal that I've already done intel with a cash buyer. He says, Rick, I'll pay $75,000 for that property. And then I go back, the seller was stuck at like 74. Maybe I get him down to 68. And if my cash buyer is ready to go and I have no other options, my disposition strategy is to take $2,000. Not the worst deal in the world. Sometimes you just have to take a profit and move on. Understand what your disposition strategy. It's critical in figuring out the valuation of your wholesale properties. The last one I'm going over is what I call transactional control. And this is your ability to control your wholesale deal, because the more control you have, in my opinion, the more value you have. Now, this is my 21 years experience of wholesaling. What do I mean by that? Are you using your own title company? If yes, you're well on your way to having control, and you can confidently predict the outcome of your transaction, understanding what the value is and what the profit is. Use the cash buyer's title company. You have no idea. Honestly, maybe you're doing an assignment of contract and that title company is very uncomfortable doing assignment of contracts, and then they overly disclose this to the seller, which they should already know ahead of time anyways. And if you hit that fact, it's going to destroy your deal. And if your cash buyer is really uneasy about something like that, I've seen more title companies destroy a deal that don't believe what investors do with assignment of contract. And for that reason, sometimes they'll train wreck the deal just on that. That's what I'm talking about on control of it. As far as the earnest money deposit, if you use your own title company, you can verify when the money went in there. Is it refundable? Is it non-refundable? You understand it. A lot of times when you use another title company, you have no idea. And sometimes you can sign the wrong paperwork because you're not used to seeing it because it's not your title company. Guys, having control of the transaction is critical in valuing all your wholesale deals. When it comes to the closing date, it's critical that you control this. And most of us want to get deals done in 30 days or less. 30 days to me is extreme in wholesaling because if it's cash, everything should be done within 2 weeks, but 30 days is the maximum. Now, if you have to wait due to a title issue or anything like that, do you have control? Is there a pending code violation? Who are you using to help you out with it? Are you using one of your team members? Are you depending on a realtor? Are you depending on a title company? Guys, this is what I'm talking about control, and it is everything. The last part of control is timing. A lot of what we do in wholesaling is there's timing. There's always something that comes up in a wholesale deal. Let's face it, we are buying problematic properties and we are being paid to solve a problem. Now, sometimes sellers get frustrated, cash buyers get frustrated, title companies get frustrated, code violation people get frustrated. And what happens is people get upset and they want to get out of a contract or they don't want to sign an extension. And it's critical that you understand the more control you have over the situation and the less issues in your deal. If there's multiple code violations, maybe there's a pending lien that you're waiting for someone to sign off, and maybe there's a problem with the title. Understanding those issues are going to fester and probably not going to close in a timely manner. And it's your responsibility to get extensions. And sometimes sellers and cash buyers, they don't want to wait. And if you don't have control and you don't understand what your seller and your cash buyer wants, it can blow up your deal. So remember, the less issues you have with the property, usually the more control you have, and the more issues with the property, the less control you have. Take, for example, a probate. Sometimes it's just undetermined when it's going to close, and cash buyers will come in and out of contract. They won't wait around. And sometimes sellers get impatient if they have to wait 3 or 6 months. And it is your job to maintain control. Now, in the beginning, it's hard as a new wholesaler because you're not familiar with this stuff. And my suggestion is go through freewholesaling.com. We go through this in detail. We also go through this and share community on Facebook, our Wholesaling Houses for Real group. Join there, talk to people, and we try to solve problems. But keep in mind, when you're starting out, sometimes control can be a big issue, and sometimes you need additional help so you know the right words to say to get through any contract. Remember, the more issues, the more control issues you might have, and you've got to factor this in when underwriting your deals so you can evaluate them properly. So guys, which of these 4 issues are you struggling with, or do you need work on? Or maybe you want me to shoot a video to help explain it in a little bit more detail. Let me know in the comments below. And as usual, if you got value from this, you actually use the material to help you understand wholesaling or maybe help you evaluate a deal, make sure you smash that like button. You hit that subscribe notification button to continue to receive the best up-to-date information on wholesaling. Guys, this is Rick Ginn. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.